Apple just wrapped up their Let Loose event where they talked about new iPad Pros, iPad Airs, and made some changes to existing products. Let's get into it right now. Let's start with the most simplest, which is going to be the iPad 10th generation. The changes are simply price. It's now about down to $349 available today. Second, we're going to talk about the iPad Air. The iPad Air is now available in two different sizes. There's a larger 11-inch screen size and a brand new 13-inch screen size. Both devices feature a liquid retina display capable of 264 pixels per inch. It's very comparable to the display that was in the iPad Air from last year. There is a P3 color gamut, true tone, fully laminated, anti-reflective coating, and 500 nits of brightness in the 11-inch version, while the 13-inch version supports 600 nits of brightness. So it's just a little bit brighter. Apple increased the storage size, coming in at 128, 256, 512, and 1 terabyte for the 11-inch and the 13-inch model, which is good because it felt like the 64 gigs was really just out of line for Apple, even charging that amount of money, $599, for that amount of little storage that they were giving you in that entry-level version. Now, I'm really excited about this device. There are 4 new colors that are available in the iPad Air. They're not necessarily new entirely. They're Starlight and Space Gray, which were available in other iPads, but you also have the addition of a blue and a purple, which I both ordered that look nice as well. Next, Apple has tuned the M2 processor for better performance in the iPad Air with giving you an 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU in the 11-inch and the 13-inch models compared to an 8-core or an 8-core CPU, GPU in the iPad Air 5. Next, let's move to the back of the iPad where Apple has kept the same 12-megapixel camera on the back of the iPad with a True Tone flash, which results in 4K video for the back camera. And the front camera has been upgraded to be a 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera with center stage. That's gonna be along the landscape edge of the iPad so you can hold it like a normal human being and not have to look like an idiot when you're on FaceTime and other video calls. Thank you, Apple, for doing that. It's really appreciated. So directionally, the 11-inch and 13-inch version look very much the same. I think that the 13-inch version is gonna be probably the go-to for a lot of people. As Apple pointed out during the keynote, a lot of people choose the iPad Pro simply for their larger screen size. And if that is indeed a true fact, that would make the 13-inch iPad Air probably a go-to for a lot of people, even people that have the 12.9-inch iPad Pro today. They want to downgrade in the future, not necessarily a downgrade, but they want the ability to get a better technology without necessarily having to incur the higher cost, which the iPad Pro, which we'll talk about in just a moment, is absolutely higher cost. Now, I like the 13-inch iPad Air in blue. That's my color that I ordered. I want to know which one you like down in the comments below. But let's shift gears to the iPad Pro. First, Apple's introducing a new screen size, and the iPad Pro is available in 11-inch and 13-inch. The display technology has been upgraded from mini LED to OLED, and that OLED is dual stack, which they call tandem OLED or tandem retina display. And basically that's one panel on top of the other so you can get double the brightness. For standard SDR content, you are getting 1000 nits of peak brightness and you are getting 1600 nits of peak brightness for HDR content. So there's an increase for standard brightness for regular use cases if you're not consuming HDR content, which is great because it could look a little dark. It was previously 600 nits like the iPad Air 6 13-inch. In terms of processors, it has been updated to the M4. And what's interesting is that Apple is kind of binning the processors. If you choose the lower configurations of 256 and 512, you are getting 9-core CPU, 10-core GPU, opposed to a 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU on the upper configurations. They're also giving you less RAM with 8 gigs of RAM on the lower configurations versus 16 on the upper configurations. But the memory bandwidth stays the same, still at 120 gigabytes per second. So those are all interesting things. It's gonna unlock, I think, several new use cases in terms of being a creator, being able to use the iPad as your sole computing device. I am interested in that. The iPad also has some updates to include Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro. It's not clear if those updates are going to be specific to the M4, if they'll be available on older devices, but that is a nice update as well where you can use Final Cut Pro and import the images live from different cameras in a live switcher, and those cameras have to be iPhone with the Final Cut camera app that is going to be available, I think, today as well. Now, the iPads are available to order starting today with the 11-inch iPad Pro costing $999 and the 13-inch costs $1,299 here in the US. If you want to go ahead and increase the storage, it starts at 256, goes to 512, 1 terabyte and 2 terabytes. Now let's move on to the Magic Keyboard, which might be the most interesting part of the event. Apple has updated the Magic Keyboard to support the 11-inch and the 13-inch M4 iPad Pro, and there's 2 new features I think that are most notable, one I'm kind of concerned about. First, that the Magic Keyboard has a full row of function keys at the very top, giving you a little bit more versatility, a little bit more utility of how you use the iPad Pro. Today, that feature is unavailable. Second, that the bottom trackpad is now a haptic feedback trackpad, and it's much larger than it was on the previous generation Magic Keyboard. Third, most interestingly, which I'm kind of concerned about because I don't know what's going to happen when I close it, that top part of the Magic Keyboard where the screen closes on top of is made out of aluminum. They've had to have thought of that. I hope they did, because having all these people with a scratched iPad Pro just from closing it on there is going to be a little bit cause of concern. It's not really possible to tell in the pictures whether it has some type of edge on it to protect it, but we'll have to see when it arrives next week. And it is worth noting that Apple did stop manufacturing the Smart Keyboard Folio for the brand new iPads. Now, what I don't know is that whether if I have a new iPad Pro, will it work with the old Magic Keyboard, or vice versa, if I have the old Magic Keyboard, can I use it with the new iPad Pro? That will remain to be seen once we get the devices next week. And it is nice that they kept the prices the same for the 11-inch and the 13-inch Magic Keyboard at $299 and $349 respectively, and they still remain compatible with the iPad Air as well. Now let's talk about the Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil has been updated to include the Pro moniker, includes several new, I think, notable features. One, Find My, so you can no longer lose your Apple Pencil. Two, the barrel roll, where you can rotate the Apple Pencil because there's a built-in gyroscope now, and then it changes the brush tool that you're using, and the ability to squeeze the Apple Pencil with haptic feedback and to bring up the color palette or the switcher. And those are, I think, configurable based on the app that are going to be used or developed by the app developer themselves. Surprisingly, they did keep the price the same at $130. But now they have a plethora of different Apple Pencils that you can choose from, probably making it more confusing. I think I'm going to do an Apple Pencil, maybe like a shootout or something, and see what the difference is. So make sure you're subscribed for that. Now, I think Apple's done a very good job today of presenting the iPad in terms of capabilities and all the features that people have been asking for the most part. People ask for, I want another, a USB port on my iPad, which they would never do. But I think the iPad is now more closely can replace your computer more than ever it has before based on these new capabilities. I want to know from you, do you think that you would use the iPad as a computer replacement? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you are picking up an iPad, which one are you buying? My name is Mike. Guys, I hope you're subscribed for more content like this. I'll talk to you in the next one.